Hello, I'm Meg Sullivan, and welcome to Done with Diets, where we're speaking with leading women's health and wellness professionals to learn how to prioritize you, the busy modern woman, and create lasting changes which will help give you more health, time, and vitality. And I'm so excited today about our guest, Marc Sklar, who is a women's health and fertility expert. Marc's work focuses on all women's issues, but truly has a focus on fertility. And this is where his gift is. For the last 15 years, he's been helping couples struggling to conceive have healthy babies. So whether you're looking to conceive or not, Marc's work is all about finding balance. So Marc, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Meg.
Yeah. So your approach is as well-rounded as your education. You have such an extensive background. Can you share a little bit about your education and training?
Sure. My approach, well, let me start long time ago. When I was a young boy, I always loved helping people, and I always thought that I'd get into healthcare. Little did I know much that at the time that there was all these options for me and all these options available in healthcare. I just thought, okay, I'm just going to be a medical doctor and so on. And so I started as pre-med, really fell out of love with medicine in that time frame and started wanting to work with patients more through psychology. So I started to become a psychology major. Didn't enjoy that very much, and it was quite boring at the time. And so I always had a passion for understanding people in the world, and I found myself studying philosophy and religion. And so my undergraduate degree is actually in comparative religion, and something I still am passionate about and love to understand and study. And then as I was going through school, I became sick or a little bit sicker, enough to open my mind and my heart to other healthcare options. And I started seeing a Chinese medical doctor for my healthcare, and that led me in a certain direction. And when I graduated from undergrad school, I knew that at the time I couldn't do anything with a degree in comparative religion. So I knew I was going back to school, and my parents knew I was going back to school. And so, although they were kind enough to let me kind of, search my own path for that. And my acupuncturist said, well, why don't you go to Chinese medicine school? I said, well, there's an option. I always loved medicine, and it was always a passion of mine. And so I said, I'm going to move out to California. I'm going to study Chinese medicine. And the worst thing that happens is I don't love it. And I got to live in San Diego for a year. And I never looked back. It was something that I loved from the moment I stepped into that school. And even to this day, it's a big passion of mine and something that I love. And so I tried to use that as my foundation for my practice. And it was really important for me because it was something that I felt was lacking with some of the earlier practitioners that I saw for my own healthcare, was that they were very much rooted in their own medicine, and they had very little knowledge of Western medicine. We live in a day and age where Western medicine is a big part of our healthcare, and rightly so. They do a lot of things that are very good. And so it was really important for me, not only in my education, but in my practice, my clinical practice, that I was able to merge these two things together. So I really like to have one foot on each side of the fence, if you will, and utilize Western medicine for what they're strong with, and then take in Eastern medicine, and even beyond that, nutrition and lifestyle management and stress management and mind-body medicine, and really bring all of those things together in the way I approach patients. Now, not all patients need all those things, right? But at least we have those tools, and then we can afford them, that we can give those tools to those patients when they need it.
So you have kind of the pre-med Western medicine background, but you use the Eastern medicine to support that, as well as this whole integrative approach.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So we take the Chinese medical side of things, and that so when we diagnose patients, we diagnose them in multiple ways in the practice. And so we take them and we diagnose them from a Chinese medical perspective, and then that is the foundation for how we treat them with acupuncture and Chinese herbs. And then we take functional medicine and we diagnose them from a functional medical perspective. And that really lays out the foundation for how we're going to treat them from a nutritional perspective, potentially supplements, lifestyle recommendations. We'll look at their lifestyle, their stress, their family life, and make recommendations there. So it's really bridging all of those things together to create the treatment plan for patients. And as a bridge around all of that, it's understanding when it's important to go see their medical doctor. It's understanding what tests to order and when to order those things and how to read them, so that way we can give them the best understanding and the best treatment plan that's going to get them the best results and the fastest results.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you just touched on it, but one thing that I really love is that you never look at just the single issue. You never look at, oh, it's just advanced maternal age, or it's just PCOS, or it's just endometriosis, or whatever the woman's health issue is. You really look at the whole picture. And how does looking at that whole picture allow you to approach a health concern or a health challenge from different angles?
You know, it's really important because we are, well, if we think of things from a Western perspective, we're going to isolate each system, right? And we're going to say, oh, we have thyroid disease, and so our whole issue is in the thyroid, or our whole issue is in the ovaries, or whatever it might be, right? But we all know more and more that, and if we all were to think logically about it, our body is not compartmentalized in that fashion. Every system communicates with the other systems. So we have to look at the body in a more complete and, I'm not the biggest fan of the word, but a more holistic perspective, where you are looking at the whole body. You're being able to connect the different systems when there's a disorder going on, and be able to understand how it's affecting different areas, or how it can affect different areas, and in turn make recommendations about when we, or how we bridge those things together. Right. So for me, lifestyle is really, really important. Balance in life is really important, as we've discussed in the past, and managing your stress is really important. And so that's always going to be an underlying theme for me when I work with patients, because of its profound and far-reaching effects on the body.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about life balance, and how does life balance have an impact on really every aspect of health? And I think, we've talked earlier how sometimes we as the modern person, we as women can make things really more complex than they need to be. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, men and women, we see things differently, right? We approach things differently. Everything for a man is very linear. Like, how do you get from A to B to C? And how do you do that in the most efficient and fastest manner? Now, we're making generalizations. Right. It's not always this way. But and women, it's not just about how we get from A to B, but it's how you get from A to B, and how we weave ourselves to it. So sometimes as women, we, instead of going in a straight line, we'll go in a circle, right, to get to that destination. And it makes things more complicated, or can make things more complicated. So in our modern life, we have so much coming at us every day. I remember we all have our parents who are like, I remember when I used to walk to school and right up the hill in the snow. We all had that. Well, we're going to be talking to our kids when I say, I remember where we didn't have a cell phone. And I remember when we didn't have email and all of those things. And I remember when we were told, like, oh, these things will make our life more easier, more simple. But in reality, they've made them more complex and more difficult, because now we're able to be accessed all the time, whenever someone wants to reach us, or whenever we want them to reach us. And on top of that, we've got so much stimulus coming at us. We've got our partner, we've got our kids potentially, we've got our extended family and our friends, we've got our work, which we tend to, in America at least, really dive into and spend most of our time at. And so, and that's not even talking or taking into account the quality of the food that we have available to us, and the toxins in the air. So there's so much stimulus coming at us, things that we can see and things we can't, that affect our everyday life. And so it's really important to me that we simplify things. If there's one thing we know today, hands down, is that stress impacts all aspects of our health. It's not going to just impact our fertility. It's going to impact the way our thyroid functions, the way our digestive system functions, really everything, the way we think. That it reminds me of a quick story. I had a patient referred someone to me, and she doesn't live in San Diego. She lives, I think it was in Arizona. And she kept emailing me, asking me questions. She's seeing a practitioner in Arizona, and she was wondering, why she should reach out to me to talk to me and see what I can offer, because she felt like we potentially offered the same thing.
Okay.
And I said, I said in the email, and just like in any healthcare field, in actually any profession, no two providers or services are going to be the same, right? You can have two realtors and they're going to be different in the way they provide the service to you. Same thing with doctors. So I said, hands down, we have different approaches. But outside of that, I kept saying, well, just call and schedule time to meet with me so we can really talk about what you want. I'll sit down with you for 20 minutes for free, no problem. Mm-hmm. And she kept putting up a wall against that, like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not going to force you to do something you don't want to do. But her final email to me said, really, what I want to know is why and how does diet affect fertility? And it was interesting to me because she was isolating this one thing and couldn't see how far-reaching of an effect it had. And for me, diet and stress are the two key foundational things that we need to really manage and control really well, or they will just destroy our life. Mm-hmm. And so, stress is one of those things that if we can't control and find good balance and find a lot of joy and happiness and pleasure in our daily life, it's going to be a struggle for us in our health and in our everyday life. We're always going to feel like we're 3 steps behind. We're always going to feel like we're trying to catch up. We're always going to feel like, well, I just need to eat on the go and grab the first thing that I can see because I'm starving. So it's about finding that overall balance in our life that yields us the foundation and the grounding that we need to support every other aspect of things that we want to do, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's diet, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you're working with a patient, and I know that every patient is going to be different, but if diet or nutrition and stress are kind of those two underlying things that you're always seeing that always need help, what are some general guidelines or general tips that you can give our listeners today as far as managing stress and making improvements on what you're putting into your body?
So for me, everything's in moderation. I remember my parents would always stress to me, just a little bit in moderation. My grandparents would say the same thing. I was a little kid. I didn't understand. What do you mean moderation? I just want a lot of that cake or a lot of this or whatever it was, right? But it's one of my mantras with my patients is slow. Let's do things slowly. Everything in moderation. Let's just make baby steps and make the progress that we need to get to that final destination. Mm-hmm. There's some things I'm a little bit more strict on, but in general, it's about baby steps. So if you've got a plan for managing your stress, if we dive in head first, odds are we can't maintain that.
Right.
So we have to just layer things in. It's the same thing I do with my patients. I might think that they need all of these things, but I'm going to start here and I'm going to layer them in. Mm-hmm. And then by the end, I might not need to add in everything I originally thought because they're doing so well and they're making and achieving the progress that they want to achieve. So I really try hard to really recommend layers. So let's just take stress. We want to manage our stress. So this week, you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to find one thing that I really enjoy doing, and I'm a hobby or whatever it might be, and I'm going to start to do it. I'm going to just do it once this week. And then see if I can add more of it. That might be exercise. It might be reading a book. It might be just taking a walk on the beach. It might be taking a hike or watching a movie. We all manage our stress differently and need different outlets. So it's about taking baby steps to do that and just adding that in. And then each week building upon it. So this week you add one thing, the next week you add another. You make time at least once a week to go out with your significant other as a date. It's some people I hear say, oh, but I don't want to schedule time with my husband or wife because I think that we should always just have to be able to be available to each other. I was like, I'm not sure what world you live in.
Right.
But it's not my world, right? Because we're all so busy and we're going to find things to consume ourselves with. So we have to schedule time with our family. We have to schedule time with our significant others, with our friends. So once or twice a month, you make time to go out with your friends just to socialize. And it doesn't even have to be with your husband or wife or partner, just you time. It could be just with your best friend. Right? So these are all things that are really, really important that we tend to neglect, especially when we start to get into, when we get married or we get into a serious relationship, because these are things that identified us when we were individuals. We wanted to make sure that we always, whatever it might be, I love watching football on Sundays. So when it's football season, and it's the one thing my wife said is the strange thing about me. She's like, she didn't expect it. But I grew up watching football. So it's something, when it's football season, I want to watch football. So she understands that it's my one escape during the week, right? So I just need 3 hours, let me watch my football game, right? We all need different things. And those were things that identified me as an individual before I got married. And it's important not to lose those things once you do get married or become in a serious relationship. So it's building upon the things that you enjoy doing in life. It could be knitting, whatever it might be. So that's, I believe, one of the ways that you manage stress. I think we all get caught up in this, to manage my stress, I need to meditate and I need to do yoga and so forth. And personally, I'm not a yoga fan. For me, it just doesn't work for me, right? But it works for a lot of other people. So if that's what works for you, then go for it. I prefer to have a backpack on my back and to be climbing a mountain because I'm meditating when I'm in nature, when I'm taking steps out in nature, and I'm just going and I'm not distracted by anything else. So we're all going to have different things that are stress relievers for us. But at the same time, we also have to find it's important to have those relationships with other people. So it's finding the individual thing that's going to give you stress relief, and being able to go out and socialize and have those really important relationships and communications with your friends and family and your spouse or partner to make you feel closer to other humans. And that really fulfills your life. That starts to fill your soul, starts to fill your spirit. So that's really important on the stress side of things. And on the diet side of things, that takes a lot of time, potentially. It's the hardest thing I ask patients to do. I'm sure you've heard it before. Yeah. The diet portion of things is not just important, it's essential, but you have to be somewhat forgiving with yourself too. So take baby steps. This week, I'm going to add more water, and I'm going to do it by 1 glass a week. So this week it's 1 glass, and then next week I'm adding 2 glasses, just until you get to your quota. This week, I'm just going to, reduce my sugar intake by 50% versus 100%, whatever those things might be. But we have to remember it's going to take like 3 or 4 weeks for us to really feel comfortable with those changes. So we have to also be forgiving with ourselves. The hardest thing I find with patients is that they beat themselves up so much. Oh, I slipped this week. You're going to be so upset with me. I said, well, tell me what you did. And they tell me, I'm like, doesn't sound too bad to me. I mean, okay, so they're harder on themselves than I usually am with them. And so I think it's important to be forgiving. So I try to really manage and control my diet, right? But I also try not to deprive myself. At least in this stage of my life, I can do that. I can give myself a little bit of flexibility. So I was in Miami visiting my family. That's where I'm from. And we were out in, the whole food truck craze was out. And I saw a food truck. It was gelato pops, gelato on a stick, essentially, right? It was a food truck. I was like, that looks fantastic, right? And I picked the one I wanted, and someone asked me if they could share. I said, absolutely not, and I enjoyed every last bite of it. And I didn't, and I said to myself, I'm going to give myself this indulgence and I'm not going to kill myself for it even, right? So I think it's really, really important that we enjoy what it is that we're going to give ourselves those flexibilities. If it's a glass of wine, then don't beat yourself up for having that glass of wine at the end of the week. Enjoy it, because if not, it's really not worth it. It's absolutely not worth it. Now you've given yourself extra stress and you're probably not feeling great. So it's all of those things that when it comes with diet, there's balance, but there's also needs to be a nice progression of progress to meet your goal and not kill yourself doing it. So that's really what I mean by balance and finding that life balance with making those changes.
And I think you kind of just hit the nail on the head with diet and stress being so intertwined, and having that treat or that indulgence and then stressing or feeling guilty that you just did it, well, that just elevates the stress up.
Yeah.
So,
I see it all the time. I'm trying to get patients to not worry about that.
Yeah. So now I know that a lot of your patients are highly, highly motivated because they're coming to you for a very specific reason, and that's fertility. What do you say to somebody who says, well, I know I need to reduce my stress, but I don't have time to do that? How do you impress upon them that, no, this is a prescription that I'm handing over to you, that you need to do this?
We have a very serious conversation. We sit down, and it's often not just one conversation. That first conversation is the start for them to realize that we all have to come to terms with things in our own time, in our own way.
Right.
I'm there to help guide and be a teacher, and so I really want to push patients to recognize that. And so we're going to start. I'm going to tell them what I think and how important I think it is. And then we're going to strategize together what's the best way to get you there.
Okay.
And then from there, we're going to check in, right, and make sure that you're reaching those goals. And if you're not, then how do we bypass that and get you to your goal the way we need to, and we re-strategize. So it's really, really important to find that balance with managing your stress. I had a patient, it was really, really funny. This was probably 10 years ago. She, sleep is another big thing for me, by the way. And so I usually run down a patient's day. So tell me typically what your day looks like, when you wake up, and so on. We're having this conversation. And she says, well, I wake up at 5 a.m. and already my red light goes off in my head. 5 a.m. I'm like, I want to sleep, So she wakes up at 5 a.m. She says, and I said, to do what? She said, oh, I'm good to go exercise. I'm like, okay, at 5 a.m. She said, yeah, I'm waking up so I can exercise to reduce my stress. I'm like, okay, mental note. And she tells me her whole day. She's going through her day, and she's expressing, all of those things. And then I eat and so on. And then at the end of the day, I said, so tell me, what time do you go to bed? She goes, yeah, between 11 and 12. I'm not getting any sleep. Yeah. So I said, so let's say these things out loud. I think it's really important. We don't hear ourselves, and our brain plays tricks on us, and we have to say things out loud a couple of times for us to realize how silly it sometimes sounds, right? Said, so listen to these words. You're waking up, you're going to sleep at midnight. You're waking up 5 hours later to exercise to reduce, or theoretically reduce, your stress. Does that sound right to you? She said, now that you put it that way, no. I said, okay, well, this is what I want you to do. You're not allowed to, I want you to go to sleep, between 10 and 11. You're not allowed to wake up or to exercise. So if you wake up on your own before 7 o'clock, that's fine. But other than that, you're not allowed to wake up to exercise. You could find any other time in the day to exercise, doesn't matter to me, but you can't wake up to exercise. You're causing more stress. She didn't realize she's actually getting less sleep, affecting her adrenals and her cortisol levels, and so she's causing more stress on her body. We don't think of it that way. And so she did that. A month later, she was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
A month later. I mean, it was, I didn't have to do much with her, right? It was that simple. But we forget, we don't see stress as, we only see stress as emotional stress. I was stuck in traffic, or someone really upset me, whatever it might be. But all of these other factors are stress. So we have our diet, if it's not right for our body, for us individually, it can be a stressor, right? Not enough balance in our life can be a stress. Not enough sleep can be a stress. So there's so many different ways. Environmental toxins are a stress. So there's so many ways that we have stresses on our body that we don't think about. And so we get caught up with silly things like, oh, I know exercising is good for me, so I need to exercise. So I'm going to reduce my sleep and increase my exercise, forsaking my sleep, and you just caused yourself more problems.
Right.
Yeah. So we need to find more balance in that process. And sometimes it's just creating that clarity for patients for them to realize that so that they can start to implement those things.
As simple as saying it out loud.
Yeah.
So, Marc, your true gift is really in the arena of fertility. And while I know that not every woman that's attending this event is looking to get pregnant, chances are that she probably knows someone who has had a fertility challenge, whether that's a sister, a daughter, a friend, whoever it may be. Chances are she knows someone. I myself have had a miscarriage. But let's talk a little bit about your book, The Secret to Conception, and how this ties in with life balance and fertility challenges that some people can experience.
Sure. Actually, the book specifically is all about finding balance and reducing our stress. But it's geared towards fertility. How do we do this towards fertility? The recommendations we make are all towards fertility. And so the book it comes in 3 parts. There is the actual book itself, which goes over the theories and the knowledge base and lays down the foundation. Then there's a workbook that accompanies it that allows you to work through that on your own. So it gives you exercises. In some places, those exercises are to just recap where your stresses are coming from. Some places are to do a diet journal and start to analyze your diet a little bit more closely. And then the third part is the meditations that come with it. It's the MP3s that come with it. And so those are downloadable. Some of the exercises are, we give you strategies and so forth, and then it says, okay, now listen to the meditation number, whatever it is. And so I think there's 10 or 12 meditations. And the reason why we included the different meditations is because one thing I learned when I studied at the Harvard Mind Body Institute, there's so many different ways to meditate or create mindfulness for ourselves, but we all have different things that we gravitate towards. I mentioned this earlier. I don't really care for yoga personally, but I love Tai Chi because it's more flowing, there's more movement to it, and I get lost in that process. Similar to yoga, but yoga is a little bit more static for me personally. So similarly, there's different ways that you can meditate. There's all different techniques. There's one you just sit there and just count your breaths versus other ones that are literally like contracting muscles and relaxing them to reduce stress. And so we're all going to associate with different aspects of those. And so that's why we put those in there. So you might not love all 12 of the meditations, but you're going to love like 2 or 3 of them. And those are going to be the ones that you go back to regularly. So the book is really designed to bring in a lot of the things that we've mentioned today so that patients can isolate and realize what's causing the disturbance in the body, how that's going to affect their fertility, and then how analyze their own way to approach that and then make the changes and so forth. So that's why we have the 3 different parts of The Secret to Conception.
Fantastic. So another thing that we spoke about earlier was that you see a lot of incredibly busy, successful type A women coming into your practice. And a lot of times they've been able to easily conceive with their first child. And now they're ready to have the second. And here's where the challenge comes in. So can you tell us a little bit about that dynamic when we think, oh, wow, we're in the clear, we had the first baby, and then all of a sudden you have these issues trying to have your second?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I see this so often in the practice. And the reason why I see this is because we thought it was so easy the first time. And the difference is that the first time we didn't have a child to care for. And so we were able to prioritize, comes back to prioritizing.
Right.
We're able to prioritize ourselves ahead of anything else. So we made time after work. It was really easy. We just went to the gym or we went for a walk. We always had time available to us to go once or twice a week, go out with our friends and our significant other. And so it was really easy, very, very easy to find that balance, because if you just wanted to say no to one thing and say yes to something else, no problem, right? It was relatively easy if you didn't get lost in your work. And so when we have a child, life dramatically changes, as you know.
Yes.
For everybody involved, our priorities shift, and they shift dramatically. Where you used to be one or two on your priority list, depending on who you were interacting with and depending on the situation, you would fluctuate probably between 1 and 2. Now, especially as women, you're maybe, if you're lucky, you're 2, but odds are you're 3 or 4 or maybe 5 on that list, because you've got 1 child or 2, so you've got children, you've got work, you've got your spouse, you've got food and nutrition. You're definitely down on that totem pole, unfortunately, and I see this routinely, that you don't make time for yourself to eat. You make food for everybody else, and as a byproduct, oh, there's a little bit of this. Oh, she's not going to eat that. I'll just eat a little bit of this, and then you're running around about you overschedule yourself and the children, and so now it's just about rushing from one place to another, to another, to another, and you never have time for yourself. You never have time for exercise. You never have time to eat properly. If you're lucky, you have maybe an hour or 2 to talk to your significant other as a way to de-stress at the end of the day. You sit on the couch and turn on the TV because you're tired of dealing with anything, and so you just want to veg out.
Right.
Or it's the time of the day where you try to catch up with things, and so now instead of going to sleep at 10 o'clock, you're going to sleep at 12 or 1 because you're trying to catch up with your day, and then you wake up at 6 because I don't know about your household, but my kids wake up at 6.
Are you looking in my windows?
And so they are my alarm. And so, we really don't prioritize ourselves. And I'm sure this resonates with a lot of people who are listening. They're like, how did he know that I just right? But I'm just telling you what I see, not only in my house, in my siblings' houses, what I see in my patients' homes, what they describe to me. And so it's really, really easy for that stress level to come up, for your adrenals to get depleted. It's very easy for prioritization to go out the window. Our diet goes to hell. We're just getting in whatever we can. So that's probably the most important time to find balance and to be able to say no to things and not overschedule yourself. So it's very easy. We want to, especially, it's amazing this day, we want our kids to be able to do everything under the sun. Well, I want them to be a great musician, and I want them to play sports, and I want them to learn how to swim, and whatever, all the different extracurricular activities that you want them to do. And they can't do it all, and they shouldn't do it all. They need downtime as much as you need downtime, right? So it's about being able to let them have time for themselves, you finding time for yourself. And it's about really, if there's a time to really, really learn how to plan appropriately and be able to balance things out right, this is the time to do it. You make a meal plan for the week, and you know exactly what you're cooking on Monday and Tuesday for lunch and for dinner. You can have some variation in there if you feel like, today we're just going to do this instead. That's fine, but at least you have a guideline to guide you. It helps guide you for shopping. It helps cooking. It makes cooking so much easier. You don't have to think about anything. Today's Tuesday. It's tacos. Okay, whatever it might be. It helps you with prepping for cooking, so you can try and do as much as you can on a weekend when you have a little bit more time theoretically. And then it's about making sure that you get a babysitter so that you and your spouse can go out and connect again and relate. You know, all of those things that I mentioned earlier, where's sex on that list, right? I mean, it's like, well, we're too tired.
And that's kind of part of it.
You know, that's it. Well, you know, we just have sex because I'm ovulating, so we make time for it. Like, well, that's not even enjoyable. You know, so you want to enjoy life, you want to enjoy these things. So it's really about prioritizing all of those things, making a schedule, following the schedule, and being able to plan appropriately. So I find that that's really, really important when we're trying to get pregnant the second time, and when we have patients who come in saying, I've really had a hard time conceiving my second or third child. The other reason for secondary infertility, and some of it I do believe comes from all of the stresses that I just mentioned and the imbalance, is it's very common for us to have health issues after a pregnancy. So it's very common to have thyroid disorders, even if you didn't have it before, because naturally the thyroid can go out of balance during pregnancy, and it's harder for it to go into balance postpartum, and it takes a little bit of time. The stress can cause an imbalance and cause us to have maybe blood sugar issues and insulin issues. You know, so there's other health issues that arise postpartum that we didn't have the first time. So we think, well, I didn't have that before. Why would I have that now, right? And so we want to just cross all of those things off the list and look a little bit closer at that, which I find is very, very important. The amount of times I see thyroid disorders from someone who's having secondary infertility is at least 60%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's always at the top of my list of things to rule out after a pregnancy, and for those who are trying to conceive and having trouble. And then just finding the balance that I mentioned before. And it's harder the second time because we have somebody dependent on us, and they can't function on their own for the most part, you know, and they can't sustain themselves. And so we have to see how we can get that support, whether it's from friends or family or a nanny or a babysitter, whatever it might be. We need to find more balance.
Well, and the story about, you know, finding that support and having kind of moving down on the totem pole for considering about second baby, it reminded me of a little bit of a story. And I'm, you know, whether you're religious or spiritual, I'm a believer in nature and the universe. And I once had somebody tell me a quote, which I will probably botch the exact language, but the essence was that the universe or deity, whatever it is, isn't going to give you something that you can't handle. So if you can't even handle what you have right now, then you're not going to be able to, you know, have that second pregnancy. You need to show the universe or God or whatever you believe that I can handle what I have now and I'm ready to take on more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree. Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah. And that goes with, it's about keeping the balance. So if we are having trouble with our significant other after a pregnancy, why would we want to introduce another child into that relationship? Because our foundation, our most important relationship with our spouse is not even grounded and has the support that it needs. So we need to give nourishment to that as well. So I 100% agree.
Yeah. So now can you tell me a little bit about prioritizing yourself and really what you impress upon your patients, that you need to prioritize yourself, and when you don't, you really start to diminish yourself as a person?
Yeah, you know, I think the way that we realize that is when I start to talk to patients about the lack of enjoyment and joy and happiness that they have in their lives. They love their kids, they love their spouse, but if you truly ask them, like, are you happy with your life right now? The answer would be no. Because they've been put down on that priority list, right? So for me, it's really important that patients recognize that they're not happy. And the most important thing in life is for them to be happy. So what do we need to do to get them to be happy? And that's how they start to realize, well, you're right. I need to push myself up on that priority list, right? So for everyone who's listening, one thing I would ask all of you is, are you happy? And not just in one aspect of your life, not just in, oh, I've got a child and I really love that relationship and I couldn't imagine my world without them. That's great. But are you happy with everything else?
Right.
Are you happy with the balance in your life? Are you happy with the relationship with your spouse? Are you happy with just your regular day? You wake up and you find joy, in the day, and you're just happy to be there. So use that as a guide. And I've seen this. I'm going to be using it in one of my programs, but I don't have it in front of me. I've seen this like pizza pie wheel, right? And each thing is cut up into a different aspect of our life. So diet, and then relationship, and work, and happiness, and children, and whatever else, right? So there's this big pie. So I would write a pie for yourself of all the important things in life that make up the important things for you in life. And then rate each one on a scale of 1 to 5 for yourself. 5 being the best. If they're all not out of 5, we have to figure out a way to get those as close to that 5 as possible.
Right.
And what do we need to do? And most of the time, I promise it means prioritizing yourself in that, right? So how are you going to get your exercise? Maybe you can't do 6 days a week of exercise, but you can get 2 or 3. It's a start, right? Maybe you can't buy everything organic and you can't make all the best decisions when it comes to your diet, but you can start and you can make baby steps. So it's about using that wheel and then saying, how do I prioritize myself, and how do I make sure that in all aspects of these areas, I'm at a 4 or a 5, and I can truly say my life is happy and full, right? My cup is full. How can I say that? And I think that's really what starts to drive people. We have to realize things emotionally inside for us to be able to make the decision to make change and move forward, because change is hard, really hard.
And it takes a while to incorporate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we beat ourselves up if it's been 2 weeks. I can't believe I didn't do, whatever it is, whatever it is. We're so ambitious because we all we hear is these stories of these successful people being very, very ambitious, right? Oh, I built my business to $1 million business in 1 year, or whatever it was, right? We should not compare ourselves to anybody else. It should be about our pace and our time frame, and making sure that the most important thing is happiness. At the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, the only thing you're going to say to yourself is, did I have a good life? Did I have happiness, right? And so that's usually not about, oh, I built the most successful business and made millions of dollars, although that's probably being financially stable is one aspect to happiness. So I'm not discounting that in any way. But it's about finding that balance and being able to say to yourself at the end of the day that I really found a lot of joy and happiness in my life, and I was able to live a fulfilled life. And how do you accomplish that?
I love that. So, Marc, if people want to find out more about you and your work, where can they go to find you? And I think you have something that you want to talk about, that you want to give the audience.
Yeah, so I have, so I've got 2 websites. So for my local practice here in San Diego, it's reproductivewellness.com. It has a lot to do with fertility, but we do all women's health issues. And then we are just putting out and starting our marcsklar.com website, which is how patients or people who want to work with me who don't live in San Diego can reach me. So marcsklar.com and then reproductivewellness.com. On my reproductivewellness.com page currently, we have about 4 ebooks that if you just sign up, you get 4 free ebooks. They're awesome, about diet and just regular fertility tips. I think one's on fertility for yoga, gives you all great poses and what to do for increasing your fertility through yoga. So those are some great things to do. And then if you just want to reach out to me through the marcsklar.com website, you can reach out to me to have a 20 to 40 minute consultation, free consultation. So anyone who just wants to talk to me and pick my brain, find out a couple of things that I think that they could tweak or change in their life to make change and make progress and meet their goals, I'm happy to sit down and talk to them, whether it's on the phone or Skype. And so they can do that through marcsklar.com, and I would love to do that. I find that a lot of fun, which is why I'm doing it.
Well, Marc, thank you so much. I know that you are incredibly busy, and that is incredibly generous of you to offer that to our audience. So I really, really appreciate that, and thank you. And thank you so much
my pleasure.
for all of your wisdom and knowledge, and letting us know about these steps that actually we can start incorporating today. Not that we're going to be at the end goal where we want to be, but we can start making those small changes today. So I'm very, very appreciative.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah. And so for our listeners, stay tuned for tomorrow's interview. It's going to be the same time, same place, delivered right to your inbox. So thank you so much for coming.
Do you get my emails with fertility tips? If you don't, you're so missing out. To get access to all the secrets to get pregnant fast, you need to be part of my newsletter. I share a lot of things there that you can't find anywhere else. Click here so I can send you 5 secrets to get pregnant fast directly to your inbox today.